Admiral Vanira Blackwood stood at the viewport of the Earth diplomatic station, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the Xeraxian battlecruiser approach. Its crystalline hull caught the light of Earth's sun, fracturing it into rainbow patterns that belied its deadly purpose. After 30 years of commanding humanity's space forces, she knew that beauty often masked the deadliest threats. "They're hailing us, Admiral," Lieutenant Hassan reported from his communications station. "The Xeraxian Imperial delegate demands immediate audience." Blackwood allowed herself a small smile. "Demands, do they? Show them to the Obsidian Chamber." The Obsidian Chamber was humanity's masterpiece of psychological warfare, though the Xeraxians wouldn't realize it yet. Every surface was made of polished black stone that seemed to absorb light, creating an atmosphere of subtle unease. The only illumination came from floating orbs of plasma, a technology humanity had perfected but presented as mere decoration. Imperial Delegate Crix stalked into the chamber, his crystalline exoskeleton clicking against the floor. Behind him, two Xeraxian guards moved with predatory grace, their weapon arms held carefully neutral. All three aliens towered over Blackwood, their bodies a symphony of geometric patterns and sharp edges. Admiral Blackwood, Crix's translator rendered his crystalline vibrations into English. "The Xeraxian Empire has grown tired of humanity's expansion. Your species spreads like a virus, consuming resources and establishing colonies with no regard for imperial interests." Blackwood kept her expression neutral. "We expand into unclaimed systems, Delegate Crix. The Empire's boundaries are well documented and respected." "Unclaimed?" Crix's crystalline form flashed with patterns of amber and red. "The Empire claims all systems within the Orion Arm. Your continued expansion is an act of war." "Interesting," Blackwood replied, walking slowly around the chamber's central table. "And when was this claim established?" "After we began colonizing these systems, perhaps." The patterns across Crix's form intensified. "The Empire does not need to justify its claims to lesser species. You have 2 standard cycles to withdraw from all systems outside Sol. After that, we will remove you by force." Blackwood stopped at a holographic display, activating it with a gesture. The room filled with images of Earth's history, not the wars and destruction the Xeraxians expected, but the aftermath. Cities rebuilt from atomic ash. Forests regrown over battlefields. Children playing in parks that were once killing fields. Delegate Crix, humanity doesn't seek war. We've done enough of that among ourselves to last 1,000 lifetimes. But there's something your empire needs to understand. She turned to face the alien delegation. We don't start wars. We finish them. Is that a threat, Admiral? Crix's translator couldn't fully capture the dangerous harmonics in his voice. No, Delegate. It's a lesson from history. Humanity spent millennia fighting itself, perfecting the art of war until we realized its futility. We chose peace not from weakness, but from wisdom. The systems we've colonized are our homes now, filled with civilian families and peaceful settlements. If you force us to defend them, you'll learn why every species that's ever pushed humanity into a corner has regretted it. The holographic display shifted, showing the reconstruction of Tokyo after World War II, then Dubai rising from the desert, and finally the first human cities on Mars. We excel not at destruction, Delegate, but at rebuilding, at surviving, at turning battlefields into gardens. Are you prepared to face an enemy who has already mastered every form of warfare your species might imagine, and moved beyond them? Crix studied the images, his crystalline form shifting through subtle color patterns. The Empire has conquered 17 species, Admiral. None have successfully resisted. Then perhaps it's time for the Empire to meet Species 18, Blackwood replied. The one that spent its entire history learning how to win impossible wars, only to choose peace. The one that turned its weapons into tools for creation. The one that knows exactly what war costs, and exactly how to wage it if forced. The chamber fell silent except for the subtle hum of the plasma lights. Blackwood watched as Crix's guards shifted uncomfortably, their weapon arms twitching at the implied threat. "You have 2 cycles to withdraw," Crix finally said, but there was a new undertone in his harmonic speech. "The Empire's patience is not unlimited. Neither is humanity's, delegate. Neither is humanity's." After the Zyraxians departed, Lieutenant Hassan approached Blackwood. "They'll attack anyway, won't they?" "Of course they will, Hassan. Empires always do." Blackwood turned back to the viewport, watching the crystalline ship depart. "But thanks to their ultimatum, we have 2 cycles to show them why that's a mistake. Send word to the Avalon Protocol teams. It's time to wake the sleepers." As Hassan hurried away, Blackwood allowed herself a grim smile. The Zyraxians thought they were dealing with a young, opportunistic species. They were about to learn they were dealing with something far more dangerous, a civilization that had mastered war so thoroughly it could afford to choose peace, until peace was no longer an option. The Avalon complex, buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, hummed with renewed purpose. Dr. Naomi Winters watched through polarized glass as robotic arms carefully extracted the quantum cores from their cryogenic storage. Each core represented decades of research, humanity's ultimate deterrent hidden in plain sight. "Status report," she called out to her team, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Quantum cores 1 through 7 are stabilizing at optimal temperature," responded Dr. Raj Patel, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. "The entanglement matrices are holding at 99.99% coherence." They had prepared for this moment for 15 years, ever since deep space sensors first detected the Zyraxian Empire's expansion pattern. While humanity presented a peaceful face to the galaxy, the Avalon Protocol had been their insurance policy. A soft chime announced the arrival of Field Marshal Dante Rodriguez, his dark uniform bearing no insignia. The Avalon Protocol officially didn't exist. "Dr. Winters, please tell me you have good news." "Better than good, Marshal," Naomi gestured to the massive display dominating the center of the control room. "The Zyraxians use crystalline technology for everything, ships, weapons, even their environmental systems. We've spent a decade analyzing their tech, and we found their weakness." The display showed microscopic images of Zyraxian crystal matrices. "Their entire civilization is built on perfect crystalline structures. We've developed a way to disrupt those structures at the quantum level. No explosions, no conventional weapons, their technology will simply stop working." Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. "And you're certain this won't kill them?" "Positive. Their biological forms will be completely unaffected. We're not monsters, Marshal. We're just making sure they can't wage war against us." The Marshal nodded slowly. The Zyraxian commander, Crix, sent another message. "They're mobilizing their fleet ahead of schedule. We may not get the full 2 cycles they promised." "Of course they are," Naomi smiled grimly. "That's why we've already launched the quantum satellites. They're piggybacking on civilian communications networks, hidden in plain sight. The entire defense grid will be online in 18 hours. Across the complex, in a vast underground hangar, Commander Isabella Torres supervised the integration of quantum core technology into Earth's defensive fleet. The ships looked unchanged on the outside, that was intentional. But their internal systems had been completely revolutionized. "Commander," a young engineer called out. "We've successfully integrated the Q-core into the EDS Hyperion. All systems are showing green." Torres allowed herself a moment of pride. The Earth defense ship Hyperion had been a standard patrol vessel yesterday. Now it could potentially neutralize an entire Zyraxian battle group without firing a single conventional weapon. "Begin integration on the rest of the fleet," she ordered. "Priority to the border patrol ships. The Zyraxians will likely probe our defenses before committing their main force." In high orbit above Earth, Admiral Blackwood received the progress reports with grim satisfaction. The Zyraxians would expect them to fortify their borders, to mass their ships in defensive formations. Instead, Earth's fleet remained dispersed, maintaining regular patrol patterns. The civilian shipping lanes operated normally. No evacuation orders were given. Admiral, Lieutenant Hassan approached with a data pad. "We're detecting increased Zyraxian fleet movements. They're consolidating their forces at these coordinates." The display showed hundreds of crystalline ships gathering just beyond Earth's claimed space. "Good," Blackwood replied. "They're following the expected playbook. Arrogant empires always do. How many of our ships have been upgraded?" 60% of the fleet, Admiral. The rest will be completed within 36 hours. That's cutting it close, but it will have to do. Blackwood studied the tactical display. "Have our border ships maintain current patrol patterns. If the Zyraxians send scouts, I want them to see exactly what they expect to see, an inferior force, overextended and vulnerable." In the Avalon complex, Dr. Winters and her team worked tirelessly, monitoring the quantum satellite network as it came online. Each satellite carried a miniaturized version of the quantum cores, capable of projecting a field that would disrupt Zyraxian technology without affecting human systems. "Dr. Winters," Raj called out, his voice tense. "Long-range sensors are picking up anomalies. The Zyraxians are using some kind of cloaking technology. There may already be advanced scouts in our space." Naomi's hands flew across her console, bringing up the sensor data. "They're testing our detection capabilities." "Good. Deploy quantum probes 7 through 12. Let's see how their cloaking technology handles a little quantum interference." The probes launched silently from their hidden bays, their paths calculated to appear random to any watching eyes. As they spread out through the solar system, their sensitive quantum sensors began mapping every gravitational anomaly that might indicate a cloaked ship. Marshal Rodriguez watched the deployment from the Strategic Command Center. "How long until they realize what we're doing?" "They won't," Naomi replied confidently. "The probes appear to be standard gravitational mapping satellites. By the time they understand what they're really facing, it will be too late." As the second day of preparations drew to a close, humanity's greatest deception was nearly complete. To any outside observer, Earth's defenses appeared woefully inadequate, a scattered fleet, routine patrols, and civilian traffic continuing as normal. But hidden beneath this calm exterior, a quantum web was spreading through space, ready to turn the Zyraxians' greatest strength into their ultimate vulnerability. Admiral Blackwood stood at her familiar viewport, watching Earth rotate below. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Operation Looking Glass is now active. Let's show the Empire why you should always look beneath the surface before starting a war with humanity." The first attack came at 0300 Earth Standard Time. 3 Zyraxian warships dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter's orbit, their crystalline hulls ghosting through the darkness. They were prowlers, designed for swift strikes and quick retreats, perfect for testing enemy defenses. In the Avalon Complex's command center, Dr. Winters watched the quantum sensor feeds light up. "Right on schedule," she murmured. "And they brought their best toys." The Zyraxian ships moved with predatory grace, their advanced stealth systems making them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. They were heading straight for the Jupiter mining colony, likely assuming it would be a soft target. Admiral Blackwood's voice came through the quantum-encrypted channel. "Dr. Winters, are we ready for our first demonstration?" "Quantum satellites are in position, Admiral. Just waiting for them to commit fully to their attack run." The Zyraxian ships accelerated, their crystalline drives pulsing with concentrated energy. They passed the orbital markers for the Jupiter defense zone, no doubt pleased to detect only 2 outdated human patrol vessels in the area. Commander Torres, aboard the EDS Hyperion, watched them approach. Her ship appeared to be conducting a routine cargo inspection, presenting a tempting target. "All hands, maintain normal operations," she ordered. "Let them think we haven't seen them." The lead Zeraxian ship fired first, a warning shot that blazed past the Hyperion's bow. As expected, they were following standard Imperial protocol: demonstrate overwhelming force, demand surrender, then make an example of any resistance. Now, Blackwood's command crackled through the secure channel. Dr. Winters activated the quantum defense grid with a single command. There was no visible effect, no dramatic energy discharge. The quantum satellites simply began emitting precisely calibrated frequencies designed to interact with Zeraxian crystalline technology at its most fundamental level. The effect was instantaneous. The attacking ship's crystalline matrices began to desynchronize. Their perfect lattice structures, the foundation of all their technology, started to vibrate at conflicting frequencies. By all the stars, Lieutenant Hassan breathed, watching from Earth. The mighty Zeraxian warships weren't exploding or breaking apart, they were simply stopping, their systems failing in cascading waves as their crystalline technology lost coherence. Commander Torres brought the Hyperion about, watching as the proud Imperial vessels hung motionless in space, their weapons and drives reduced to inert crystal. "This is Commander Torres of the Earth Defense Fleet," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Do you require assistance?" The response was a jumble of confused and angry crystalline harmonics as the Zeraxian crews found themselves trapped aboard ships that had become little more than exotic paperweights. In the Avalon complex, Dr. Raj Patel monitored the quantum field effects. Crystalline degradation at 99.7% effectiveness. Life support systems are maintaining minimum functions as designed. They're helpless, but they're in no danger. Marshal Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. "Send in the rescue ships. Let's show them how humanity treats defeated enemies." The rescue operation was conducted with precision and unexpected kindness. Human ships approached the disabled Zeraxian vessels, their crews offering assistance with professional courtesy. The Zeraxian warriors, trained to fight to the death, found themselves confronted with an enemy that seemed more concerned with their safety than their surrender. "Admiral," Hassan reported, "we're picking up massive energy signatures from the Imperial border. The main Zeraxian fleet is mobilizing." Blackwood nodded. "They received the distress calls." "Good. Send the sensor logs of the Jupiter incident to all human colonies and outposts. Make sure our civilian traffic continues as normal." "You want them to know what happened?" Hassan asked. "I want them to see exactly what happened, Lieutenant. But more importantly, I want them to see what didn't happen. We didn't destroy their ships. We didn't harm their crews. We simply—" She paused, choosing her words carefully, showed them the difference between wielding power and understanding it. In the aftermath of the Jupiter incident, the captured Zeraxian crews were treated to an unexpected demonstration. Dr. Winters personally showed them how the quantum field had affected their technology, explaining the science behind it with professional enthusiasm. "Your crystalline technology is brilliant," she told a group of bewildered Zeraxian engineers. "We couldn't match it, so we didn't try. We simply learned to talk to it in its own language." The Zeraxian's translator rendered their response: "Why show us this? Why reveal your tactical advantage?" "Because," Admiral Blackwood replied, entering the briefing room, "we want you to understand exactly what you're facing. This isn't about victory or defeat. It's about choice. Your empire can choose to learn this lesson from a small probe force, or—" She let the implication hang in the air as the quantum sensor feeds showed the massive Zeraxian battle fleet approaching human space. 5,000 ships strong, it was the largest force the Empire had ever assembled. "They're going to attack anyway, aren't they?" Hassan asked, watching the fleets approach. "Of course," Blackwood replied. "They have to. Empires don't survive by admitting weakness. But now we've given them something far more dangerous than fear." "What's that, Admiral?" "Doubt, Lieutenant. We've given them doubt. And in war, doubt kills faster than any weapon." The Zeraxian battle fleet filled the long-range sensors like a crystalline storm, 5,000 ships strong, their formation a perfect geometric pattern that reflected their society's obsession with order. Imperial High Commander Vex stood on his flagship's bridge, his crystalline form pulsing with waves of deep crimson. Status of the human fleets, he demanded. Scattered, High Commander, his tactical officer reported. They continue their normal patrol patterns. Either they're incompetent, or it's a trap, Vex finished. But knowing that doesn't make it less effective, does it? We must attack. The Empire's authority cannot be challenged. On Earth, Admiral Blackwood watched the Zeraxian fleet's approach with calculated calm. The quantum defense grid was now fully operational, a web of invisible influence waiting to be triggered. But victory required more than just technology. Status of Operation Honeypot, she asked. Lieutenant Hassan consulted his displays. The civilian mining ships are in position, Admiral. All carrying masked quantum cores. The Zeraxians will read them as easy targets carrying valuable resources. In the Avalon complex, Dr. Winters and her team had worked through 3 straight days, fine-tuning the quantum field generators. Each adjustment was a delicate balance, too strong, and they risked permanently damaging the Zeraxians' technology, too weak, and their ships would adapt. Marshal Rodriguez, she called out, we've detected something interesting. The Zeraxian fleet has modified their crystalline matrices. They're trying to adapt to our quantum interference. Rodriguez frowned. Can they counter it? No, Naomi allowed herself a small smile. They're actually making our job easier. The modifications have made their ships more sensitive to quantum fluctuations, not less. They're so convinced of their technological superiority that they can't imagine we might be leading them into a more sophisticated trap. The Zeraxian fleet split into 3 prongs, a classic Imperial assault formation. The center force headed straight for Earth, while the flanking groups moved to cut off potential reinforcements from the colonies. It was textbook strategy, exactly what their military doctrine demanded. Commander Torres, now coordinating the scattered human fleet, watched them fall into position. All ships, maintain current operations. Let them think their tactical superiority is overwhelming us. The first phase of the Zeraxian attack targeted the seemingly vulnerable mining operations near Saturn's rings. Their light attack craft swooped in, weapons charged, expecting easy victories. Now, Blackwood commanded. The mining ships activated their hidden quantum cores. But instead of shutting down the Zeraxian vessels, these cores created localized fields of quantum confusion. Crystalline navigation systems went haywire, weapons targeted phantom signals, and communication arrays broadcast gibberish. Beautiful, Dr. Winters whispered, watching the sensor feeds. Their own formation discipline is working against them. Each ship is trying to compensate individually, creating cascade failures across their battle network. The Zeraxian fleet's perfect geometric patterns began to distort as ships struggled to maintain position. High Commander Vex watched in growing horror as his tactical displays dissolved into chaos. Status report, he demanded. Unknown energy fields disrupting all crystalline systems, his science officer reported, patterns of fear flickering across their form. The humans, they're not targeting our weapons or shields. They're targeting our ability to function as a coordinated force. In the Avalon complex, Marshal Rodriguez received updated tactical feeds. The Zeraxian fleet is fracturing. Their attempts to maintain formation are actually accelerating the disruption. Because they can't adapt, Dr. Winters explained. Their entire military doctrine is built on perfect coordination, perfect symmetry. Take that away, and they have no fallback strategy. No plan B. Admiral Blackwood opened a channel to the Zeraxian flagship. High Commander Vex, this is Admiral Blackwood of Earth Defense. You've seen what we can do. You know we can disable your entire fleet without destroying a single ship. Stand down. Vex's response crackled through, distorted by failing communication systems. The Empire does not surrender, Admiral. This isn't about surrender, Blackwood replied calmly. This is about recognition. You assumed we were primitive because we chose peace. You never asked why we chose it. As if to emphasize her point, another wave of quantum disruption swept through the Zeraxian fleet. Ships began colliding as their navigation systems failed completely, their crews unable to compensate without the crystalline technology they relied on so heavily. Hold position. Vex ordered, but it was useless. His fleet, the pride of the Empire, was being defeated not by superior firepower but by their own rigid adherence to perfection. Commander Torres coordinated the human response ships, ready to rescue crew from any damaged Zeraxian vessels. All ships, maintain search and rescue protocols. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to teach them. The lesson was becoming clearer with each passing moment. The Zeraxian Empire, with all its technological might and military doctrine, had never faced an enemy that turned their greatest strength into their greatest vulnerability. They had never imagined that their pursuit of perfection had created a perfect weakness. As the mighty Imperial fleet drifted in disarray, Admiral Blackwood made one final transmission to Commander Vex: the Empire hasn't lost a war in 1,000 years because you've only fought enemies who think like you do. Welcome to something new. In the aftermath of the failed invasion, the Obsidian Chamber hosted another meeting. This time, it wasn't just Delegate Crix who attended, but the entire Zeraxian High Command, their crystalline forms reflecting the subdued lighting like fallen stars. High Commander Vex stood rigid, his form cycling through muted colors of resignation and barely contained rage. Admiral Blackwood sat calmly across from them, a single data crystal on the table between them. This contains everything, Blackwood said, gesturing to the crystal. The complete science behind our quantum disruption technology. The theoretical frameworks, the practical applications, even the initial research that led to its development. You're giving us your greatest weapon. The translator couldn't quite capture the mix of disbelief and suspicion in Vex's harmonic speech. No, Dr. Winters replied, entering the chamber. We're giving you understanding. The weapon was never the point. The scientific presentation that followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of demanding surrender terms or imposing restrictions, humanity's representatives spent hours explaining exactly how they had defeated the mighty Zeraxian fleet. Your crystalline technology is extraordinary, Dr. Winters explained, projecting complex quantum matrices into the air. But like many extraordinary things, it has a fundamental weakness. You became so focused on perfecting it that you never considered alternatives. Marshal Rodriguez, standing at the back of the chamber, watched the Zeraxian engineers' color patterns shift from skepticism to fascination as Dr. Winters delved deeper into the quantum mechanics involved. We could have used this technology destructively, Blackwood continued. Could have shattered your ships, killed your crews. But that's not who we are anymore. We learned, through centuries of warfare among ourselves, that true victory doesn't come from destroying your enemy. It comes from transforming them into something new. Delegate Crix, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. The Empire has never negotiated from a position of weakness. Then don't, Blackwood replied. Negotiate from a position of wisdom. Your Empire has conquered 17 species, but how many have you truly understood? How many technologies have you adapted rather than simply subjugated? The data crystal pulsed softly on the table, its contents a testament to humanity's offer. Not just the quantum disruption technology, but the philosophical framework behind it, the understanding that true strength comes from flexibility, from the ability to adapt and change. Consider this, Dr. Winters addressed the Zeraxian scientists directly. Your crystalline technology seeks perfect order. Our quantum approach embraces controlled chaos. Imagine what we could achieve by combining these principles instead of opposing them. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't offering surrender terms or demanding reparations. They were offering partnership, a chance to transform an ancient empire into something new. Lieutenant Hassan, monitoring the proceedings, leaned towards Commander Torres. Will they accept? They have to, Torres replied quietly. We haven't just defeated their fleet, we've challenged their entire worldview. And we've given them a path forward that doesn't require them to admit defeat. Admiral Blackwood stood, her presence commanding despite her smaller stature. The galaxy is changing. The old patterns of conquest and submission are giving way to something more complex. Humanity avoided joining your empire not because we feared you, but because we saw the possibility of something better. High Commander Vex's crystalline form shifted through a complex series of patterns before settling on a deep, resonant blue. You speak of partnership, yet you hold the power to disable our entire civilization. Knowledge freely shared isn't power held over you, Dr. Winters countered. It's an invitation to grow beyond what you are. The negotiations that followed would reshape the galaxy. The Ziraxian Empire, faced with the choice between stagnation and evolution, chose to change. Their crystalline technology, combined with human quantum science, gave birth to new forms of advancement that neither civilization could have achieved alone. Years later, Admiral Blackwood stood at her familiar viewport, watching Earth's sun rise over the horizon. The space around Earth was different now. Ziraxian ships moved freely among human vessels, their crystalline hulls modified with quantum technologies that represented the best of both worlds. The latest reports from the joint research facilities are in, Lieutenant Hassan reported. The hybrid quantum crystalline drives are showing promising results. We might achieve stable galactic transportation networks within the decade. And the Empire? Blackwood asked. The transformation continues. 3 more species have voluntarily joined the new confederation. It turns out when you offer understanding instead of demanding submission, you get better results. Blackwood smiled. Humanity's greatest weapon was never our technology, Lieutenant. It was our ability to imagine a different way forward. We spent thousands of years learning how to win wars, only to discover that the greatest victory comes from making them unnecessary. In the depths of the Avalon complex, now a joint human-Ziraxian research facility, Dr. Winters watched as crystalline and quantum technologies danced together in new and beautiful ways. The weapon they had created to defend Earth had become a tool for building bridges across the stars. We didn't just change them, she mused to Marshal Rodriguez during one of his visits. They changed us too. Made us remember that sometimes the best way to win is to show your enemy how to become your friend. The stars above Earth shone on a galaxy transforming, where the lines between conqueror and conquered, enemy and ally, had blurred into something new. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the hardest-won wisdom of all, the understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to imagine and build something better.